The wind howled like a wounded beast, slicing through the barren fields of Maplewood Farm. Old Tom Henderson pulled his thick woolen coat tighter, his breath forming icy clouds in the air. Winter had come early this year, and the snowstorm last night had left everything buried under a thick, unforgiving blanket of white. Tom trudged through the snow, his boots sinking with every step. He had to check on the old barn at the edge of his property, the one he barely used anymore. The roof had been weak for years, and he feared the weight of the snow might have collapsed it. As he approached, his heart sank. The barn's door was frozen shut, a thick layer of ice sealing it like a tomb. He grabbed a rusty shovel leaning against the wall and chipped away at the ice, his numb fingers aching with every strike. Finally, the door creaked open. The inside was dark, the air so cold it burned his lungs. And then he heard it, a weak, trembling whimper. Tom's pulse quickened. He fumbled for his flashlight and flicked it on. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing a sight that shattered his heart. In the far corner, huddled together for warmth, were 9 tiny puppies. Their ribs jutted out against their skin, their fur matted and filthy. Their eyes, wide with fear and exhaustion, locked onto his. One of them, a little brown one with a white paw, let out another pitiful whine, as if begging for help. Tom dropped to his knees, his throat tight. "Oh, Lord! How long have you been here?" The puppies shivered violently, too weak to even crawl toward him. The barn was freezing, no food, no water. They wouldn't have lasted another night. Without a second thought, Tom ripped off his coat and gently bundled the puppies inside, their tiny bodies barely making a bulge. He cradled them against his chest, his own body heat the only thing standing between them and death. "Hold on, little ones," he whispered. "I've got you now." As he rushed back to his farmhouse, his mind raced. Who had left them here? Why? And how on earth were they still alive? But one thing was certain, this was no accident. Someone had done this on purpose, and Tom Henderson was going to find out who. The farmhouse door slammed behind Tom as he burst inside, the puppy still wrapped in his coat. His wife, Martha, turned from the stove, her eyes widening in shock. "Tom, what in heaven's name?" "No time," he gasped, rushing to the fireplace. "Help me warm them up." Martha didn't ask questions. She grabbed every blanket she could find while Tom carefully laid the puppies near the fire. Their tiny bodies were so cold, so still. "Are they alive?" Martha whispered, her voice trembling. Tom checked each one, his fingers pressing gently against their chests. Faint, slow heartbeats. Barely. Martha's hands flew into action. She warmed milk, soaked bread into a soft mush, and brought out an old dropper. One by one, they fed the puppies, drop by precious drop. The smallest of them, the brown one with the white paw, was the weakest. His breathing was shallow, his eyes half closed. "Come on, little fighter," Tom murmured, stroking the pup's head. "Don't you give up on me." Hours passed. The fire crackled. The farmhouse filled with the scent of warm milk and hope. Slowly, ever so slowly, the puppies began to respond. One lifted its head. Another let out a tiny yawn. The brown pup's tail gave the faintest wag. Martha wiped her eyes. "They're going to make it." Tom nodded, but his jaw was set. "Someone tried to kill them," Martha left them to freeze. Who would do such a thing? Before she could answer, a loud bang echoed from outside. Tom's head snapped toward the window. Footsteps, crunching snow. Someone was here, and they weren't happy the puppies had been found. Tom grabbed his shotgun from the rack, his heart pounding. Martha clutched his arm. "Tom, be careful." He nodded and crept to the door, peering through the frost-covered window. Outside, the snow had stopped, but the wind still howled. A shadow moved near the barn, a tall figure dressed in black. Tom's blood ran colder than the ice outside. He recognized that silhouette. Jared Cole, the richest man in town, the owner of the abandoned factory just beyond Tom's farm. And If rumors were to be believed, a man with a very dark secret. Tom had heard whispers about Jared's illegal dogfighting ring, about the animals that disappeared when they were no longer useful. But no one dared accuse him. No one had proof. Until now, Tom's grip tightened on the shotgun. Those puppies weren't just strays. They were evidence. And Jared was here to finish the job. The figure turned, staring straight at the farmhouse. Tom ducked, but was too late. Jared had seen him. A second later, the sound of an engine roared to life. Tires spun in the snow, then sped away. Tom exhaled, but the fear didn't leave him. Jared knew, and he wouldn't let this go. Martha appeared beside him, her face pale. "What do we do?" Tom looked back at the puppies, now sleeping peacefully by the fire. The brown one opened its eyes, gazing at him with unwavering trust. "We protect them," Tom said firmly, "no matter what." But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning, and the storm was far from over. Tom didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the old farmhouse, every gust of wind against the window, made his heart leap into his throat. Jared Cole knew the puppies were here, and if the rumors about him were true, he wouldn't let them or Tom walk away unscathed. The 9 puppies were curled together in a large basket near the fireplace, their tiny bodies rising and falling with each breath. The smallest one, the brown pup with a white paw, had nestled itself against Tom's boot, as if sensing he needed comfort. Martha placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of Tom. "You need to rest," she whispered. "Can't," Tom muttered, staring into the flames. "Not until I figure out what to do." A sudden scratching noise at the back door made them both freeze. Tom grabbed his shotgun again, motioning for Martha to stay back. He crept toward the door, his finger hovering near the trigger. Scratch, scratch. He yanked the door open and nearly dropped the gun. A gaunt, trembling German shepherd stood in the snow, its fur matted with ice, its eyes filled with fear. It took one look at Tom and collapsed. "Martha!" Tom shouted, rushing forward. The dog was skin and bones, its ribs pressing against its sides like a skeleton. But what made Tom's blood turn to ice were the scars, jagged, brutal marks covering its legs and back. Fighting scars. Martha gasped, "Cover your mouth." "Oh, Tom, this isn't just about the puppies." Tom's hands clenched into fists. Jared's been running a dogfighting ring, and this one escaped. The German shepherd weakly lifted its head, its eyes locking onto the basket of puppies. A low, sorrowful whine escaped its throat. Tom's breath caught. Was this their mother? The brown puppy let out a tiny yip, struggling to crawl out of the basket toward the injured dog. Martha's eyes filled with tears. She came looking for them. Tom knelt beside the shepherd, gently stroking its head. "You're safe now," he whispered. "No one's ever gonna hurt you again." But as he said those words, headlights flashed through the window. A black SUV rolled slowly past the farmhouse, then stopped. Tom's stomach dropped. Jared was back, and this time, he wasn't leaving without what he came for. The SUV's engine cut off. Silence. Tom's pulse roared in his ears as he grabbed his phone and dialed Sheriff Carter's number. No answer. Of course not. Jared had half the town in his pocket. Martha clutched his arm. "What do we do?" Tom's mind raced. He couldn't fight Jared alone, but he couldn't let him take these dogs back to hell. "Get the puppies into the cellar," he ordered. "Take the shepherd too. Lock the door and don't come out, no matter what you hear." Martha hesitated. "Tom, go." She scooped up the puppies, the German shepherd limping behind her as they disappeared into the basement. A heavy knock rattled the front door. Tom took a deep breath, then swung it open. Jared Cole stood on his porch, his expensive coat dusted with snow, his smile as cold as the wind. "Evening, Tom." Tom didn't move. "What do you want, Jared?" Jared's eyes flicked past him, scanning the room. "Heard you found something that belongs to me." "Nothing here belongs to you." Jared's smile faded. Don't play dumb. The dogs. Hand them over, and we'll forget this ever happened. Tom's grip tightened on the shotgun. You left those puppies to die. Jared shrugged. Weak ones don't survive in my world. Now, last chance. Where are they? A low growl rumbled from the hallway. The German shepherd stood there, teeth bared, her body trembling but her eyes blazing with fury. Jared's face twisted. Ah, there's my champion. He reached into his coat. Tom raised a shotgun. Don't. Jared froze. Then, slowly, he pulled out a wad of cash. How much, Tom? Name your price. Tom's finger curled around the trigger. Get off my land. For a heartbeat, Jared's mask slipped. Pure rage flashed in his eyes. Then he smirked. This isn't over. He turned and walked back to his SUV. Tom didn't lower the gun until the taillights vanished into the night. But as he shut the door, his hand shook. Jared wasn't the type to walk away. He was the type to come back with reinforcements. And next time, Tom might not be able to stop him. Morning came too soon. Tom hadn't slept. He'd spent the night boarding up windows, loading every gun he owned, and preparing for the worst. Martha had managed to feed the puppies and the shepherd, who she'd named Grace. Because surviving what she had, that took nothing less. Grace never left the puppy's side. She licked their faces, nuzzled them close, and when one whimpered, she was there in an instant. She really is their mother. Tom realized with a pang, but his relief was short-lived. A loud thud came from outside. Tom rushed to the window, and his blood turned to ice. A crowd had gathered at the edge of his property. Jared stood at the front, smirking. Beside him were Sheriff Carter and at least a dozen men. And they were carrying something. No, cages. Martha gasped. They can't just take them. Tom's mind raced. He couldn't fight them all, but he couldn't surrender the dogs either. Then an idea, a crazy idea. He grabbed his phone and dialed the one person who might help. The line rang and rang. Finally, a gruff voice answered. Yeah. Tom exhaled. Mike, I need your help. And I need it now. Mike Russo, the only journalist in town who'd ever dared to cross Jared Cole. And if Tom played this right, Jared's dark secret was about to be exposed to the world. Mike Russo arrived in a beat-up pickup truck, his camera slung around his neck, and a look of grim determination on his face. He'd been investigating Jared Cole for years, but the man had too much power, too many people willing to look the other way. Tom met him at the door, his voice low. They're coming for the dogs, Mike. Jared's got the sheriff with him. Mike adjusted his lens, his jaw tight. Then we don't have much time. He glanced at Grace, who stood protectively over the puppies, her ears pinned back. That her? Tom nodded. She's their mother, fought in Jared's ring, escaped to find them. Mike's eyes darkened. I knew he was dirty, but this, he pulled out his phone. I'm live streaming this. If they try anything, the whole world's gonna see. Martha rushed in, her face pale. Tom, they're at the gate. A loud crash echoed from outside. Jared's men had torn down the fence. Tom grabbed his shotgun, but Mike stopped him. No, let them come. Let them show who they really are. The door burst open. Sheriff Carter stepped inside, his badge glinting under the dim light. Tom, step aside. We're here for the dogs. Jared smirked behind him. Flanked by two armed men. Told you it wasn't over. Grace let out a vicious snarl, her body trembling, but her stance unyielding. The puppies whimpered behind her. Mike raised his camera. Sheriff, you really want to be on record confiscating abused animals? Carter hesitated, but Jared shoved past him. That's my property, and I'm taking it back. Tom stood in front of Grace. Like hell you are. Jared's face twisted. Then he lunged. Grace moved like lightning. She leapt between Tom and Jared, her teeth bared, a guttural growl ripping from her throat. Jared stumbled back, his eyes wide. Shoot it, he barked at his men. Mike's voice cut through the chaos. Live and broadcasting to 50,000 people right now, Jared. You really want to murder a mother dog on camera? Jared froze. His men lowered their guns. The sheriff paled. Jared, we gotta go. For a heartbeat, the room was dead silent. Then Jared's lips curled into a sneer. This isn't over. He stormed out, his men following. Tom exhaled, his legs shaking. But Mike's phone was still recording, and the world had just seen the truth. The video went viral. By morning, news vans lined the road outside Tom's farm. Reporters shouted questions. Animal rights activists arrived with signs. Hashtag Justice for Grace trended nationwide. Tom sat at the kitchen table, watching the chaos unfold on TV. Grace lay at his feet, her head resting on his boot. The puppies tumbled over each other nearby, their bellies full for the first time in their lives. Martha placed a hand on his shoulder. You did it, Tom. You stopped him. But Tom shook his head. Jared's not the type to lose quietly. As if on cue, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. A distorted voice hissed. You think you've won? The game's just starting, old man. The line went dead. Tom's blood ran cold. Then a boom shook the house. Smoke billowed from a barn. Fire. Tom bolted outside, Grace at his heels. Flames engulfed the old structure, licking at the sky. Sirens wailed in the distance. But Tom's eyes locked onto something else. A figure watching from the tree line. Jared. Their eyes met across the burning wreckage. Then he vanished into the woods. Grace let out a low, mournful howl. Tom knew then this war was far from over, and Jared had just made it personal. The fire department arrived too late. The barn was ashes, but as the smoke cleared, Tom noticed something odd. The flames hadn't spread. This wasn't just arson. It was a message. Mike pulled up in his truck, his face grim. Tom, you gotta get out of here. Jared's got friends in high places. They're gonna freeze your accounts, call in loans, they'll bury you. Martha clutched the puppies closer. Where will we go? Mike hesitated. Then I know a place. 3 hours later, they arrived at a secluded cabin deep in the woods. It belonged to Mike's brother, a former Marine who turned survivalist. No one will find you here, Mike promised. Grace sniffed the unfamiliar air, her ears twitching at every sound. The puppies, nestled in a travel crate, yawned sleepily. Tom stared at the horizon, his jaw set. This isn't running. This is regrouping. Mike nodded. I've got contacts at the state attorney's office. They're building a case against Jared, but we need proof. Tom's hand absently stroked Grace's head. What kind of proof? Mike's eyes darkened. Records, financials, witnesses. He hesitated. And someone who's willing to go back into the lion's den. Grace suddenly stiffened. Her nose pointed toward the tree line. A low growl escaped her throat. Tom's hand froze. Someone was out there, watching, waiting. Mike slowly reached for his gun. Then a twig snapped. Grace exploded into motion, barking wildly as a shadowy figure burst from the bushes. Don't shoot. A teenage boy stumbled into the clearing, his face bruised, his clothes torn. He collapsed at Tom's feet, gasping, Please, help me. Jared's after me too. Tom's breath caught, because he recognized this kid. It was Jared's son. The boy's name was Eli Cole, 16 years old, bruised knuckles, fear in his eyes deeper than any well. Tom dragged him inside the cabin as Grace circled warily, her nose twitching at the scent of blood and gasoline clinging to the boy's clothes. The puppies whimpered in their crate, sensing the tension. You're Jared's kid, Tom stated, watching the boy gulp down water like he hadn't drunk in days. Eli wiped his mouth with shaky hand, not by choice. His voice was raw, like he'd been screaming. Martha bandaged a cut on his arm. What happened to you? Eli's gaze flicked to Grace. I tried to stop him. His fingers trembled. I opened the barn door that night. Let Grace out. thought she'd run away, but she came here for them. He nodded at the puppies. Tom's breath caught. This kid saved them. Mike leaned forward. Why? Eli's face crumpled. Because I've seen what he does. The fights. The kennels. A tear cut through the dirt on his cheek. There's more dogs. Dozens. Underground. He's moving them tonight. Killing the weak ones. Grace let out a whine, nudging Eli's hand with her nose. Tom exchanged a look with Mike. This was their chance. Where? Tom demanded. Eli swallowed hard. The old slaughterhouse off Route 9. But his voice dropped to a whisper. He's got men with guns. You can't just walk in. Tom stood, his bones aching but his resolve ironclad. Watch me. Midnight. Freezing rain. Tom, Mike, and Eli crept through the woods behind the abandoned slaughterhouse. The stench of rust and old blood thick in the air. Grace padded silently beside them. She refused to stay behind. Eli pointed to a rusted vent near the ground. Lead to the kennels. Mike pried it open with a crowbar. The screech of metal made them all freeze. No alarms. No shouts. Tom went in first. The tunnel was narrow, dripping with condensation. The deeper they crawled, the louder the sound became. Whimpers, barks, the snap of a whip. Then Tom saw it. A cavernous room lit by flickering bulbs. Dozens of cages stacked like firewood. Dogs with scars, missing eyes, broken legs. And in the center, Jared Cole, laughing as two pit bulls tore into each other in a blood-spattered ring. Tom's stomach turned. Grace let out a sound between a growl and a sob. Mike started filming. Eli grabbed Tom's arm. The keys! They're on the post by the door. But we need a distraction. Tom's eyes landed on a fire extinguisher hanging nearby. He didn't hesitate. Boom. The extinguisher exploded against the concrete. White foam spraying everywhere. Jared shouted. Men scrambled. Go! Tom yelled. Grace moved, streaking toward the cages, her teeth bared. Mike sprinted for the keys. Eli began flinging open cages. Dogs poured out, howling, limping, alive. Jared's face twisted in rage. Eli! He lunged for his son. Grace leapt, her jaws clamping onto Jared's arm. He screamed. A gunshot cracked. Grace yelped and collapsed. Time stopped. Tom saw red. He tackled Jared to ground, his fists swinging, his vision blurred with tears. You monster! Chaos erupted. Dogs barked. Men shouted. Sirens wailed in the distance. Mike had called the cops. But all Tom cared about was Grace. She lay in a growing pool of blood, her breath shallow. The puppies needed her. He needed her. Eli dropped to his knees beside her, sobbing. No, no, no. Grace's tail gave one weak thump. Her eyes found Tom's. And in that moment, he understood. She'd known the risk. She'd done it anyway. Tom cradled her head, his tears falling onto her fur. You brave, beautiful girl. Her chest rose, fell, rose. A miracle. The bullet had grazed her shoulder. Eli ripped off his shirt, pressing into the wound. She's alive. She's alive. The doors burst open. State troopers swarmed in, guns drawn. Jared, bleeding and beaten, spat at Tom. This isn't over. But as the cops dragged him away, as the rescued dogs licked Tom's hands, as Grace whined for her puppies, Tom knew the truth. Grace had won, and her legacy would live on. The vet's clinic smelled of antiseptic and hope. Grace lay on the stainless steel table, her breathing shallow but steady, her shoulder wrapped in thick white bandages. The bullet had missed her vital organs. A miracle, the vet called it. Tom stroked her head, his callous fingers gentle. You're gonna be okay, girl, he whispered, though his voice cracked. Beside him, Eli Cole sat slumped in a plastic chair, his face hollow. The boy hadn't slept in 2 days. Not since the raid. Not since he betrayed his own father. Martha placed a steaming cup of coffee in Eli's hands. "Drink," she urged. "You're safe now." Eli's hands trembled. "He'll never stop," he murmured. "Not until he gets what he wants." Tom's jaw tightened. He knew Eli was right. Jared Cole wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat. He was the kind who burned it down. The clinic door burst open. Mike Russo stormed in, his face flushed with triumph. "You're not going to believe this," he panted. "The DA just filed 17 counts against Jared. Animal cruelty, illegal gambling, attempted murder for shooting Grace." Tom's breath caught. "They're really going after him?" Mike grinned. "Oh, it gets better. The feds are involved now. Turns out Jared been laundering money through that dogfighting ring for years." Eli's head snapped up. "Wait, if they seize his assets." Mike nodded. "The Cole Empire is crumbling, kid. And you're a hero." Eli's eyes filled with tears. Grace let out a soft whine, stretching her nose toward him. Tom watched as the boy buried his face in her fur, his shoulders shaking. Some bonds, he realized, ran deeper than blood. The farmhouse was quiet, too quiet. Tom stood at the window, staring into the moonlit fields. 3 weeks had passed since the raid. Grace was healing. The puppies were fat and happy. Jared sat in a jail cell, awaiting trial. So why couldn't he shake this feeling of dread? Behind him, Martha snored softly on the couch, a puppy curled on her chest. Eli was upstairs, finally sleeping through the night. A floorboard creaked. Grace's head shot up, her ears pricked. A low growl rumbled in her throat. Tom's hand went to the shotgun. "What is it, girl?" Then, scratch, scratch, scratch. At the back door, Grace lunged forward, her teeth bared. Tom flipped on the porch light, and his blood turned to ice. A cage sat on the steps. Inside, a gaunt, trembling Rottweiler stared back, its eyes glazed with pain. Tied to the bars was a note. "You should have taken the money. Now it's war." Tom's fingers trembled as he reached for the latch. The Rottweiler whimpered. Grace let out a howl that shook the windows. And in the distance, tires screeched away into the night. Dawn broke over Maplewood Farm, but the sunlight brought no warmth. Sheriff Carter stood on Tom's porch, his face grim. "We found Jared, second in command, dead in a ditch," he said. Throat slit, message carved into his chest. Tom didn't need to ask what it said. Eli paled. "He's sending a warning." To me, Grace pressed against the boy's leg, as if to say, "I'll protect you." Tom exhaled. "We can't stay here." Martha's eyes widened. "But the puppies, Grace." "I know." Tom's voice was steel. "That's why you're leaving. All of you." Mike's got a safe house upstate. Eli shook his head. "What about you?" Tom picked up his shotgun. "I'm ending this." The sound of engines cut through the morning air. They were here. Tom met Grace's eyes. "Take care of them," he whispered. Then he stepped outside and faced Jared Cole's army alone. Tom Henderson stood alone on his porch, the cold morning air biting his face. 3 black SUVs skidded to a halt in his front yard, kicking up gravel. Doors flew open. 6 armed men stepped out, their faces hidden behind ski masks. But Tom only had eyes for the man who emerged last, Jared Cole. Free from jail, his expensive suit wrinkled, his eyes burning with madness. "Bail!" Tom spat, tightening his grip on the shotgun. "How the hell did you?" Jared smirked. "Money talks, old man." He glanced toward the house. "Where's my son?" Tom didn't flinch. "Gone. And you're not getting near him." Jared's smile vanished. He nodded to his men. "Burn it." Tom raised a shotgun. Bang! A gunshot exploded from the tree line. One of Jared's men dropped, screaming, clutching his leg. "What the?" Then, a war cry erupted as a dozen figures charged in the woods. Farmers, neighbors, men and women with hunting rifles and pitchforks. Leading them, Sheriff Carter, his badge gleaming. "You're under arrest, Jared," Carter growled. "For real this time." Jared's face twisted. "You work for me." Carter cocked his pistol. "Not anymore." Jared lunged for a gun. Grace exploded from the house like a furry missile, knocking Jared flat. Her teeth closed around his wrist as he howled. Tom stared in shock. Martha stepped onto the porch, phone in hand. "Live streaming to whole county," she said sweetly. "Smile, Jared." For the first time, Jared Cole looked afraid. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed as Jared Cole, now in an orange jumpsuit, glared from the defendant's table. Eli sat across from him, his testimony about the dogfighting ring silencing the room. But the real bombshell came when the prosecutor played a recording, Jared's own voice, ordering the murder of the puppies to tie up loose ends. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Life in prison. The crowd erupted. Outside, Tom hugged Eli as the boy sobbed with relief. Grace licked his tears away, her tail wagging for the first time in weeks. Then a limo pulled up. A silver-haired woman stepped out. Eli froze. Grandmother? Victoria Cole, Jared's mother, looked at her grandson with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Eli. I didn't know what he'd become." She turned to Tom. "Let me make it right." She handed him a check, $2 million, for the dogs, for your farm, for justice. Tom's hand shook. This could save Maplewood. But Grace growled low in her throat. Something wasn't right. The celebration of the farm that night was bittersweet. Neighbors feasted on barbecue as the puppies tumbled in the grass. Eli laughed as Grace stole a steak right off his plate. But Tom couldn't shake the dread in his gut. He found Victoria alone on the porch. "Why now?" he asked bluntly. "After all these years?" Victoria's smile faded. "Because Eli is all I have left." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And Jared will escape." Tom's blood ran cold. "What?" A gun clicked behind them. Eli stood there, tears streaming down his face, holding a pistol to his grandmother's head. "He's already free," Eli choked out. "They threatened to kill Grace if I didn't help him." Shadows moved in the trees. Jared Cole stepped into the light, his face bruised but his grin vicious. "Miss me?" Grace leapt. Bang! The gunshot echoed across the farm like a thunderclap. Grace yelped, but it wasn't her blood staining the snow. Eli had twisted at the last second, firing past his grandmother into Jared's shoulder. His father staggered back, shock flashing across his face before fury took over. "You little traitor." Grace didn't wait. She launched herself at Jared, her teeth sinking into his injured arm. He screamed, batting at her, but she held on like a vice. Chaos erupted. Neighbors scrambled for weapons. Victoria Cole collapsed onto the porch steps, her face ashen. Tom lunged for Eli, yanking the boy behind him just as Jared's remaining thugs surged forward from the tree line. "Get inside." Tom roared. Martha grabbed the puppy's basket and bolted for the house. But Jared wasn't done. With a snarl, he yanked Grace off his arm and hurled her into the frozen horse trough. She hit the ice with a sickening crack and didn't move. "No!" Eli screamed. Tom saw red. He tackled Jared into the snow, his fists swinging. "You'll never touch them again." Jared laughed, blood on his teeth. Too late. Then, a shotgun pump. Everyone froze. Sheriff Carter stood in the farmhouse doorway, his barrel trained on Jared's chest. "Game over," Carter growled. But Jared just smiled, because behind the sheriff, one of his men held a knife to Martha's throat. The world narrowed to two things: the knife at Martha's neck, and Grace's limp body in the trough. Tom's breath came in ragged gasps. Eli sobbed beside him. Even the puppies had gone silent in their basket, sensing the horror unfolding. Jared wiped blood from his mouth. "Drop the gun, Sheriff, or the old lady dies." Carter hesitated. Splash! Grace exploded from the trough in a shower of ice water. Half drowned, bleeding, alive, she charged the man holding Martha. His knife flashed down. Grace twisted midair, taking the blade in her flank instead of her heart. Martha screamed. Tom moved. He grabbed the nearest weapon, a rusty pitchfork, and hurled it like a javelin. The tines thunked into Jared's last henchman's thigh. The man howled, dropping the knife. Sheriff Carter didn't hesitate this time. Bang, bang, 2 shots, both kneecaps. Jared collapsed, shrieking. Grace staggered to Martha's side, licking her hand weakly before collapsing again. This time, her eyes didn't reopen. The vet worked for 3 hours. Tom, Martha, and Eli waited in the clinic's fluorescent-lit hallway, covered in blood and snow. The puppies dozed fitfully in their crate, whimpering whenever Grace's faint whines carried to the door. Finally, the vet emerged. "She's alive," he said wearily. The knife missed her organs, but she lost a lot of blood. The ice water actually saved her, slowed the bleeding. Eli burst into tears. Tom sagged against the wall. Then the vet's face darkened. "There's more. While you were gone, the police raided Jared's properties." He handed Tom a phone. The video showed a concrete bunker beneath Jared's mansion. Cages, dozens of them. But these weren't fighting dogs. They were breeders. Emaciated females with swollen bellies, their eyes dead with exhaustion. Tom's stomach turned. The puppies, the vet nodded. Grace wasn't just a fighter. She was a mother before. Jared must have dumped her and her litter when she got too injured to breed. Martha clutched the sleeping puppies closer. These babies survived hell twice. Just then, a weak whine came from the exam room. Grace was awake, and when Tom brought the puppies to her, she nuzzled each one with trembling devotion before locking eyes with him. In that look, Tom saw it all. "Thank you. Protect them. I'm ready to rest now." But as the vet prepared the euthanasia syringe, Eli suddenly grabbed his arm. "Wait!" He yanked something from his pocket, a check. Victoria's $2 million. "There's a specialist in Boston," Eli pleaded. "She saves police K9S with worse injuries. Please." The vet hesitated. Grace let out one soft woof, her tail thumping weakly, as if to say, "I'm not done fighting yet." The private veterinary jet, courtesy of Victoria Cole's guilt money, hummed through storm clouds as Tom cradled Grace's bandaged head in his lap. Her breathing was shallow, her body hooked to IVs, but her eyes still burned with life. Eli sat across the aisle, nervously scrolling through photos of Dr. Rachel Kwan, the legendary K9 surgeon. "She rebuilt a German shepherd spine with 3D printed vertebrae," he said, voice cracking. "She can save Grace." Martha squeezed his shoulder. In the cargo hold, the 9 puppies slept in a heated crate, oblivious to the battle raging for their mother. Then, beep, beep, beep. Grace's heart monitor spiked. Her body convulsed. "We're losing her." Tom roared as the vet tech lunged for the emergency kit. Eli screamed Grace's name. And in that moment, as the plane bucked through turbulence, Tom did something he hadn't done since the war. He prayed. Dr. Kwan's looked like a sci-fi movie. Robotic arms, holographic scans, and a team of 12 specialists. "This is worse than we thought," she said, pointing to Grace's x-ray. The knife had nicked her aorta. "I can try a new stem cell graft, but..." She hesitated. "There's a 70% chance she won't survive anesthesia." Tom's knees buckled. Eli collapsed into a chair. Then, woof, Grace, barely conscious on the gurney, nudged Tom's hand toward the consent forms. Dr. Kwan gasped. "She's choosing." Tears streaming, Tom signed. As they wheeled Grace away, the surgeon paused. "One more thing. We can fix her fighting injuries too. She'll run again, if she wakes up." The door swung shut. The longest 4 hours of their lives began. When Grace opened her eyes, it was to 9 wet noses nuzzling her face. The puppies, now plump and playful, had been smuggled into a recovery room by a weeping nurse. Dr. Kwan beamed at the monitors. "Her new vascular graft is perfect. And look, She tapped Grace's hind leg. The dog kicked reflexively. For the first time in years, Eli burst into tears. Tom hugged Martha so hard he lifted her off the ground. But the real miracle came at dawn. Grace stood, then took a step, then ran, a clumsy, joyful gallop, straight into Eli's arms, knocking him over as the puppies piled on top in a wriggling, yipping mountain of fur. In that moment, Tom knew some souls are unbreakable. 1 year later, Maplewood Farm's grand reopening was front-page news. Thanks to Victoria's millions and her life sentence for aiding Jared's crimes, the barn was now a sanctuary, home to 37 rescued fighting dogs, all rehabilitated by Grace's gentle example. The original 9 puppies, the brown one with a white paw, now named Lucky, became Eli's service dog, helping him testify against Jared at trial. 2 flop-eared siblings were adopted by Sheriff Carter's kids. The runt, dubbed Tiny, starred in a viral Super Bowl ad for animal rescue. And Grace? She lay in the sunshine, her scars gleaming, watching her puppies play in the same field where she'd nearly died. Tom scratched her favorite spot. "We did good, girl." Grace licked his hand, then suddenly bolted toward the fence, barking wildly. A familiar black SUV rolled up. The door opened, and Jared Cole stepped out, his orange jumpsuit swapped for prison garb. He'd escaped. To be continued in Season 2? Smash that like button if you want more. Which puppy's journey should we follow next? Comment below. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the shocking finale. What would you do if Jared showed up at your farm? Let's debate in the comments.